Hi friends, the purpose of this video is to quickly take you through a series of three videos. The first one being the principles of a methodology called PRINCE2, which is an acronym for Projects in Controlled Environment. Now, this is a methodology developed by or rather, Axelos is the owner of this particular methodology, which is an organization based in the United Kingdoms. Now, Prince2 is a popular methodology for managing projects, and the entire methodology of Prince2 is built around four integrated elements, and the four integrated elements are: number one, seven principles of Prince2; number two, the seven themes of Prince2; number three, the seven processes of Prince2; and number four, tailoring all of these elements to suit the project environment. So, what we're going to do is look into the principles, the themes, and the processes in three separate videos. So this particular video would focus on the seven principles of Prince2. Let me highlight the seven principles of Prince2 to you. So we're going to talk about the seven principles and what do they mean in the context of a Prince2 methodology. Let me highlight the seven principles for you. So these are by the way, this is a chart developed by Management Plaza. I'm using their chart to explain the principles, themes, and processes. Let me choose a box. So we're going to focus on these seven principles of Prince2. By the way, Prince2 makes it categorically strong that if any project does not use any of the seven principles of uh, this particular methodology, it is not a Prince2 project. So let's focus on these seven principles. The first principle of Prince2 is a continued business justification. Now, that's a very important principle in any project. Now, even before we start a particular project, it's very important that we have a rationale or have a justification or a cost benefit risk analysis for that particular project. Why is it that we are undertaking the project? Now, the justification could be related to increase of revenue, increase of market share, increase of customer numbers, reducing operational expenses, increasing profit margins, and the list kind of goes on. And it's very important that we articulate business justification or the reason for managing or starting an initiative. Now, the reason why this justification needs to be continued is because at any given point of time during the project life cycle, if the project is no longer considered to be viable, achievable, or desirable, then it needs to be taken up with the project board to determine if one needs to continue the project. Let me give you an example on this particular principle. Now, in the pharmaceutical world, it does take a significant amount of time for any pharma company to develop a new product. Let's say, for example, Pfizer as an organization has discovered a new molecule for cancer treatment of a particular disease. Now, let's say Pfizer has conducted all clinical research trials and it has submitted its a product to FDA for an approval, and if, let's say it's waiting for the approval from FDA. And let's say another competitor of Pfizer, let's say Novartis, is working on a similar molecule, and And let's say in terms of the product life cycle, they have not reached, let's say, the clinical trial stage. Now, the decision makers on the product development on the Novartis side, they might take a call in terms of pulling the product off the R&D shelf because a competitor is already ready to submit the product, let's say, into the marketplace. And therefore, it's very important that there needs to be a rationale for starting a project not only at the start, but also during the entire life cycle of a project. The second principle is the principle of learning from experience. Now, let me highlight that for you. That's the second principle, learning from experience. As the saying goes, there's nothing new under the sun. What we have learned in the previous projects can definitely be data points that we could use on a current project. So even before we start a project or even before we create a project brief document, which is one of the important pre-project documents in the PRINCE2 framework, the framework recommends that we learn from experience. Now, the practice of documenting lessons, archiving lessons is a good practice for organizations because they would help other organizations or other projects pick up data that could be used on their projects. So learning from experience is an important principle, and it's an important exercise that every project manager should engage in before starting a new project. So that's the second principle. Moving on to the third principle. Sorry. The third principle is define roles and responsibilities. Now, one of the reasons why most of the projects fail is because of a lack of clarity on the roles and responsibilities. What is the role of a project manager? What is the role of, let's say, the project team lead? What's the role of a project sponsor? And it's very important that we define the roles and responsibilities of the various personnel involved in a particular project. Now, in a PRINCE2 methodology, three layers of management or three layers of stakeholders are um, talked about. One is at the level of directing the project, usually members of the project board, i.e., the business executive, a senior supplier, and a senior user would constitute a project board. And the next layer is the management layer, and the project manager along with the management team they constitute the management layer, and the last layer is the delivery layer where the team leaders and team members are involved in delivering the project. So it's important to define the role and responsibility of a team leader, the role and responsibility of a project manager, the role and responsibility of a senior supplier, of a senior user, of a project assurance officer, and the list goes on. And it's very important that we have these roles and responsibilities defined at the very outset of the project. Now, moving on to the fourth principle, um, that is management by stages. Now, PRINCE2 believes in creating three different kinds of plans when working on a project. The first plan is called the project plan. The second plan is a stage plan. And the third plan is a team plan. Now, the reason for these plans is to make sure that the project has a governance mechanism in place. Now, it's not possible at all times to have a clarity in terms of a defined um, uh, list of activities that we work on, scope, timelines, and cost at the very outset of the project. Let's say we are working on a 12-month project, and One cannot have perhaps a visibility of the work in terms of a detailed work that needs to be done in the ninth month of the project or the 10th month of the project. So it's a good idea to kind of use a rolling wave technique to break down the project in stages and make sure that we have an overall project plan in terms of a high level plan and a detailed project plan at the stage level. And the term stage in Prince2 is could also be represented as a phase. If you look into the PMI terminology, PMI prefers to use the word phase, and Prince2 prefers to use the word stage. In other words, the whole idea behind this particular principle is to make sure that we break down the project into phases or stages. That would really help in putting a proper governance mechanism in place and making sure that that one uses a rolling wave approach in refining the project and putting in appropriate controls on the project. Now, the fifth principle is the principle called management by exception. Now, this is a very important principle in order to make sure that we make the best use of the senior management time within the organization. Now, in many projects and in many organizations, a lot of the precious time of the senior management is eaten into by the constant raising of issues and concerns by the PM and the PM team for resolution. Well, if at the outset the PM's authority is defined in terms of budget management or technical conflict management and so on, that would help in making sure that the PM would only approach the direction team only when it goes above, over and above his levels of empowerment. Let me give you an example. Let's say the PM is given an authority to make decisions on budget variants that are less than 10% of a particular stage budget. Well, that would really help the PM to take a call the uh, if the budget goes over and beyond an agreed upon figure, and if it is less than 10%, well, the PM would make sure that he would put in his thinking cap before he kind of goes to the direction team. Now, I think this is a very important principle to be adopted within the organization to make sure that we save the precious time of senior management on strategic decision making within the organization. Now, the sixth principle is the principle called focus on products. Now, again, when we look into a lot of organizations and when we look into a lot of projects, there seems to be a lot of focus on the project activities rather than the deliverables that we create. And therefore, Prince2 is of the opinion that the focus should be on the products that are being delivered. The focus should be on deliverables. The focus should be in meeting the requirement of the customer in terms of taking care that the products do contain the requirements that customers have requested for. And towards that end, Prince2 has a very strong quality approach towards managing the quality of the products that are being delivered. And the last principle is a principle called Tailor to suit the project environment. Now, this is an important principle, and in the 2017 edition of Prince2, there has been a greater emphasis on tailoring the project to suit the project environment. Let me give you an example of what Prince2 means by tailoring to suit the project environment. Now, if you are working on a project that is not a large size organization in terms of budget or scope or timelines, you might decide to combine certain roles within the Prince2 framework. Let's say you might say the role of the project team member and or rather the project support and the project manager would be done by one single individual. On the other hand, if you're working on a larger project with the need for a greater number of resources, and if you're working on a high risk initiative, well, you might need to kind of add additional roles within the organization or within the context of the project to manage those aspects of difficulty. And therefore, tailoring to suit the project environment is a very important element of Prince2 principles. I hope the seven principles have helped you in understanding the I would say the machine behind a Prince2 project. And in our next video, we would talk about the seven themes of Prince2 in terms of what is the approach of Prince2 towards managing these seven themes within the context of the projects. I hope you like this video. If you like this video, you can subscribe to my videos and you can like my videos. And once again, thank you for watching this video.